Good evening and welcome to Mindful Life 428. I am your host Nathan Springer. It has been a while. Hey, I know about that, Dalip. Young ones that have no interest in sleep regardless of the hour. Yeah, it's been a long couple weeks here. The whatever virus it is that has been going around Trinidad, it made its way to my abode, and apparently it didn't want to leave for quite a while. It wanted to lime around Trini Hotep. Trini, what's the word? And now we're in a brand new week. You know, I missed the furor over our coat of arms. But we are here nonetheless where we could speak about it a week on or so and see the importance of decolonizing our coat of arms. Life getting a little nice, well, that is a good thing. I like what I hear in there, Trini Hotep. Nice life is nice stuff. Nice life is nice stuff, bro. Yeah, dread, Dalip. One of the worst things with this virus is how it seems like it's a thing with the ghost when it going. I thought it was gone, and then it like, actually I'm not gone quite yet. I'm still here. You thought I was gone, but no. I just went in the shop and come back. I'm still very much here. Sickening little virus. People saying it's dengue going around. I don't know. I survived. Maybe a little mindful relationship coming to fruition. Amen, Trini Hotep. Yo, Ronnie, how things run? How's life been? Saw you at TIC. Well, thank you, Fergie. I may have seen you too. I was there, yes. Passed through. What did I pass through in the meantime? The Agri Expo. Always like to go a nice little expo here and there. The Agri Expo was wet. It was wet. Hey. Yeah, I know, Ronnie. I know. I hope as you go through it, you go through and come out on the next side. The way it goes. With all that on your mind lately, you keeping up with the news too? Wow. Can't even tell you what day it is. Well, it's a Thursday. I can tell you. And the coughs are still here. But I said, let we still see what's going on out there in cyber. It's been too long. So, cough or not, I'm still here. And yeah, we could talk about some of the political issues that are coming up. Listen. I just want to start off by saying thank you, welcome to the YouTubers out there, those viewing on YouTube, welcome, thank you for joining. But decolonizing a coat of arms. I know I am a week late. Yeah, I saw that too, Dalip Jairam, the father and daughter funeral, very sad stuff. And if indeed, as some of the reports say, that was some kind of extortion business also, that's insane to think about to some extent. And then we're talking about coat of arms. And yeah, I understand where people say some people don't like the idea that why are we speaking about crime when you talk about the coat of arms? It's not like the government can't do more than one thing at the same time. They can modernize the coat of arms and they can see about crime all at the same time. But you see, that excuse doesn't work too well when the crime situation isn't being seen about. Like, all through last week, I saw people all about saying this, that yes, the crime situation is bad, yes, there are other issues to tackle, but you can't just say that the government has to focus on one thing. The government is capable of focusing on more than one thing at the same time, and obviously that's true. That's obviously true. The government is capable, or should be capable, of focusing on multiple things at the same time. But when we look at the evidence of what we see before us, the evidence of what we see before us is not the evidence of multitasking. It's like I don't know how your parents were back in the day, but back in school days, let's say you're doing your schoolwork and you started a little extracurricular activity, you joined intercol football, you're trying to be a little baller out there on the field. And you start playing football and you tell your parents, well, you know, my schoolwork wouldn't fall back in. I could do both at the same time. And they tell you, for real? Okay, you go ahead and do both at the same time, son. And term one, you're on the bench in football and your grade went from a B to a C. Term 2, you get a sub on in one game and your grade went from B to C, now it's on D. Term 3, you fail everything and you're still on the bench. And then you come to tell your parents for the next year, Daddy, Mommy, you know, I could multitask and I could multitask. Where's the evidence of that multitasking? All right. So you could draw a pan on your coat of arms. Great, son. Son, that is lovely. You could draw a pan on your coat of arms. You could stop people from murdering each other in the middle of the day and murdering babies. Please? We could ease up on the infants being murdered. Is that a reasonable request? Somewhere amongst the pan and the coat of arms and all that, you know? And don't tell people you could multitask and the government can do more than one thing at the same time, when evidently that's not what's going on. Kevin J, are you asking, is crime really out of control? Are you asking that? Do you not live in this country? Go look at the top murders for cities in the world. Google this for me. Cities with the highest murder rate in the world. And tell me what you get from that. El Nino says, is Trinidad really hard, or we just not serious as a people? What's that even supposed to mean? Though that's one of those statements that means nothing. Who said Trinidad is hard? What's that supposed to even mean? Okay, Kevin J, I kinda don't trust Google. I live here. What are you trying to say? Kevin J, what you trying to say? You don't trust Google, you live here. What? So, okay, well, don't Google it, Kevin. Go on the New York Times website and ask them. Or go and pray to your ancestors. Whoever is your authority, since Google won't work, whoever is your authority figure, go ask the ancestors. Ask them if ancestrally that's how they murdered everyone. We see the reality, and exactly what is the reality that we see? How many murders per day? And then ask again if the crime situation is out of control. Ask again then if the crime situation is out of control, because indeed it is. And you know something, I was, one of the articles I saw pop up was the Prime Minister saying, "Don't blame me." Ironic stuff. PM, "Don't blame me," urges citizens to hold criminals accountable for deadly acts. Don't blame the Prime Minister, blame the criminals. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley is fed up with being blamed for TNT's spiraling crime rate, adding he's also tired of people seeking leniency for some criminals. Speaking at a post-cabinet media briefing at Whitehall, Port of Spain, Dr. Rowley said those contributing to high crime should not be given a pass, especially those who harm children. He also suggested that attributing high crime to office holders is baseless, while he condemned the real monsters responsible for the bloodshed against law-abiding citizens. Don't let anybody fool you that crime is not being done based on who is in office. It's done on the basis of whether there are benefits to be had by the perpetrators. And as fast as you stop or suppress one area, they surprise you with the new ingenuity and heartlessness, Dr. Rowley said. Dr. Rowley said, "Don't blame him." And now, the irony of that is one of those Dr. Rowley quotes I like to quote. One of those Dr. Rowley quotes I love to quote. From back in the day, from back in 2012, I believe it was, when Dr. Rowley said, any government that cannot solve the crime situation is part of the problem. That's what Dr. Rowley said back when he was in opposition. And now that he is in government, he has become so wise to realize that actually, no, it's nothing to do with the government. It's all the monsters outside. The monsters outside are at fault. It is not the government. Kevin J says it's not government to solve crime though. Well, here's the thing. I don't believe there's a solution to crime like that. So no, but that's a foolish thing in my opinion. It's a foolish thing in my opinion to say it's not on the government to solve crime when your government has a Ministry of National Security and a Minister of National Security. How can you not hold the government accountable when they take responsibility for it? Are we just fools out here that we are going to willingly send our money, tens of thousands of dollars of our money, into these people's pockets and then turn and watch each other in our own eyes and say, well, actually, they have nothing to do with it, so what you paying them for? What you paying them for? If we cannot hold you accountable for crime and criminality, then leave the position. Let's have no Minister of National Security. What's the point of it if we can't hold you accountable for it? That's nonsense. And okay, granted, I know there are many myriad factors that affect crime and the crime rate in a country. Yes, I know, I understand. But the government is supposed to know and understand this when they apply for the position. And the position is supposed to include in it the considerations of all the other factors. So when you are attempting, when you are going up for elections to rule this country, named Trinidad and Tobago, were you ignorant of the fact that we are a transshipment point for drugs? Was that unbeknownst to you? Dalip Jairam says, the guy said boldly, I am the head of the National Security Council, now backpedaling. Exactly. Where does the buck stop, doctor? Who does the buck stop with? Kevin J asks, can we eradicate crime? No, I don't think we can eradicate crime. But I do think that depending on the incentive structures placed on a society, that crime can move up and down. We look at that. You can look at statistics. I understand you may not trust Google or anything like that, but things like that help us to look at statistics and trends, and we could see that okay, when you are more lax on criminals, you get more crime. When you are more stringent on criminals, they tend to behave themselves better. Simple like that. Not very complicated. And now, to dial back to the other one on the multitasking block of the government, the coat of arms business. I despise decolonization. There, I said it. I despise it. What do people even mean when they say decolonize? I read an article, for those of you in the live, a couple weeks back, 2 or 3 weeks back, I read an article coming out of Jamaica, where the Maroons out of Jamaica, real descendants of the real slaves from the very go, from the jump, the Maroons want control of their own territory. And Jamaica, which is the entity that is the natural progression of the colonial state, Jamaica is telling the Maroons, no, Roxo, this is we country, and you can't do your thing. And then some mad Rasta man from Jamaica is going to jump up and try and talk about decolonizing Jamaica from the British, while Jamaica itself is a colonial power on the land. What? Who comes up with this folly? Then we supposed to jump up out here and believe you could decolonize a coat of arms. People, my brethren, my brothers and sisters, Creole people out here, those of us born out of the Caribbean, go and look where coat of arms came from and tell me, how are you going to decolonize a coat of arms? Best you tell me you're going to unsalt a salt fish. You're going to remove the fresh from shrimp. What are we doing? Coat of arms is an entire creation of Europe. What are we doing? And there's been some consultation going on of late. I still don't get the issue. Neither do I. Well, let me be honest. I do get the issue. I understand what people are attempting to see. And it's something born out of the Black Power movement, out of the decolonization movement. I understand the issue. And some people believe that in order to really take a hold of our destiny, we must shake off the vestiges of colonialism, shake off that history of the oppressors, shake off the history of the oppressors and all of that. But if that's the history that formed us, if that is the history that formed the country, how are we to remove that from ourselves? That is the history of what formed the country. Kevin J says, but do one really think that will change the society mindset? Of course it wouldn't. I saw someone speaking about the original name of Trinidad. It wasn't even Trinidad. It was Kairi. Okay, and if we name ourselves Kairi, then what? That should be removed long time. Why, Lucky Fredo? Why? Why should it be removed? Why is that? And you know what's the irony of a lot of this to me? The irony is many people speak about the real history and the real history and the real history, and they themselves don't even know the real history. We are the last of who to remove what, Lucky Fredo? We are the last of whom to remove what? What are you talking about? The last to remove what? I somehow have the inkling you do not know what you are speaking of either. It's a Thursday, you know. You can join. Feel free. Jump in and we'll discuss it. You could tell me what exactly we were the last to remove.
Pack up and talk. I am not going to be driving.
All right. What else on the coat of arms reflect colonialism? The entire thing. That's the point. That's the point. Okay. That's the point. It's like saying you want to write about removing the history of English rule and you write it in English. Like you can't remove European colonialism from a creation of the European colonists. What are we talking about? And I understand, I'm not going to say like I don't understand the issue people say they're talking about. I understand what they say they're talking about. But I don't think that they can fully make sense of it when it comes down to it. I think it's something that that many people bought into that sounded really strong and powerful when they heard it, that this is the real thing, and don't study those white European... But many people don't even fully understand the history of those things.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
You know what I said there, I think that for me is maybe why I would question on other things. A lot of persons seem to be acting on knee jerk and not really getting into the depth of why things are what it is. Or how did we reach here? Because the coat of arms is one thing, but the mindset of the people is another.
Correct.
And if the mindset of the people cannot grasp why something needs to change or why it shouldn't change, I think that is where the conflict will come. So when I ask the question, if we think crime is really out of control, I'm not saying that I'm not seeing what is going on, but there are many factors that I think people don't see behind, but it's only what is delivered to them in terms of social media or media. You know? So
Correct.
I discovered in research was in certain countries, we talk about first world, and I remember in a discussion earlier on, we say we are not first world, but I think our mentality is not first world. I think our mentality, Trinidad-wise, is not first world. But places like France and these other places, they report crime in the back of the papers. They do not put crime as a forefront to their socials or anything they're doing. So when people are not consumed by what is all that is going on or what is taking place. So in itself, they have used the same word, like they're conditioning you on what they want you to see and what they want you to take in, you know? And I think it's one aspect of where Trinidad, crime is at the forefront. And the things that are happening in Trinidad is at the forefront. But what is actually happening behind the doors, why these things are happening? Because if we really want to really solve crime, we really have to end up like Minority Report and get some precogs who could tell us when crime going on happen and we stop the crime before it happens.
Alright.
Or the heart, man, that's a different story.
And here's the thing. I understand what you're saying, but I don't know if I fully agree that it's only a matter of where the focus is. I do think that it does have some part to play with where the focus is, because yes, Trinidad is very crime focused, and I think I will put a lot of that blame squarely at the overly fancy glasses of a certain very flamboyant crime reporter, and I think he was kind of the catalyst of a lot of that. He was kind of the catalyst of a lot of that, going in funeral homes and digging in bullet holes, and I despise that. I don't think that was good for Trinidad. I think we lost some innocence as a society due to some of that. I agree there. However, I do think though that, and this is something I regularly see, when people talk about Trinidad bad and we eating grass and Trinidad, I don't agree with that. Trinidad compared to most places in the world is pretty good. Crime though in Trinidad, looking at it, comparing it to the world, we are genuinely in a bad state with crime. And I don't think that's just a matter of reporting. I think part of the reason, I think, this is my theory. We flirted with corruption because of our narco state proximity. We have had a corrupt police service for a very long time. But with that corrupt police service, we functioned as a pretty high functioning corrupt society, because the society was generally wealthy enough that you could have the parallels running there. The underworld figures control their side, and the police and they have that interaction between the corrupt politicians and the underworld figures. Gang warfare began breaking out somewhere in the 2000s. The problem with gang warfare is it accelerates, and you no longer have the old heads that could come and meet with the police and engage in some kind of corrupt nonsense to smooth it over. So they no longer have that control over the kind of gang warfare that's going on, and it's only going to accelerate, and that's what we're seeing now. And it's very difficult for a corrupt police service now to try and pull it back on that gang warfare that is already skating out of control. That seems to be what the case is to me. And
sorry.
Go ahead, see what you're going to say.
I was going to say, no, this is not for me to song bias, but I always say this. What evidence is, I'm not using with evidence. When we say corrupt police service, I think that is a bit misconstrued, because what is highlighted.
Nah, bro. I live in Trinidad.
No, I'm telling you, this is where I live. This is what I interact with.
Me too. And I can tell you.
And what most people encounter and what most people highlight is what is mine. I'm not using one mine. I will say 20% of it is what people see. They do not see the 80%.
Here's my question.
People might find a bias in saying that, but no.
Here's my question, Kevin G.
Very good.
Here's my question.
Service is very good.
Here's my question. How is it then that I could walk through community after community after community in Trinidad and Tobago, and I could tell you where all the blocks are, and I could tell you the police that are living next to the block, and I could show you the pictures of that police liming with the block man? How I could do you that?
Right. Here's the next question I will ask you. And when these things are done, and the due process by law which must to be done, which is through the courts, and the courts do not perform what they are doing, what next?
Well, I agree. I'm not disagreeing that it's a whole corrupt system. You know, you're not getting a denial of that.
Right. So this is what I'm saying. What we tend to do is highlight one entity, but it is not one entity alone functioning. Remember, if I take up you, and I'm not denying what you're saying, no. If I take you up and I carry you, if it's your friend in Parliament, your friend in some high place, you want to call the station to give reasons why we shouldn't take you. And if I do that down, I reach the place of the court, whoever is your friend is a magistrate or what, given some reason why it is you shouldn't go through the process. But let it be anybody else who doesn't fit or who have a friend go through that. You're going to see the full extent of the law happen.
Correct.
may I ask you this: if you are in that system, would you not be frustrated at some point?
You're saying something I've said before, Kevin G. I don't disagree with you. And here's what I've said this. I have said this.
I can't say the whole thing corrupted, you know.
I will say the whole thing.
To do good.
No,
I'm doing good still.
when I'm saying the whole thing, I'm not saying every single person, but I'm saying the whole thing as a system. And I understand this because just how I'm saying I live and I see the corruption on the ground levels with the police, I see the frustration because a point I regularly make, those of us who live in certain kind of communities, we know every troublemaker in the community have a case in court.
Right.
Every one of them. And what that means is that at one point in time or the other, at least once, the police did their job. Locked the person up, charged them. So the police held all of these people, and it's just on the court. Every single troublemaker in all the bad communities have a court case. So I understand that. And if I'm a police and I know I lock him up, he's going to be out next week, every time, then after some point in time, it's nearly like you're incentivizing me to just take the bribe and forget about it because it doesn't make a difference either way. I understand that. That sounds like a frustrating prospect to me.
Right.
But that's on the entirety of the system.
Right. And I would add to that. And I think that is where I may think or say, beyond the frustration, is that if things are to get done, or if we are to get things done, it is going to require sacrifice of that person in itself. When I mean a sacrifice, you could be sacrificing your whole family life to get the right thing done. Because here's the truth. In most communities and societies who know who's doing wrong, if things are to be done right, is the same people going to protect them.
I don't even agree with that. I don't even agree with that. Here's part of the issue, I think. I think many of the criminal communities have become criminal communities where the entire structure of my society that I have been born and grown in is dominated by a criminal overlord.
Right.
You can't tell me then that in this system where basically the ruler is a criminal, and I know this, and I know that he has all of these police in his pocket, that what I am supposed to do is turn my world upside down to try and undo that. I don't think that's on me. I think that's actually on the state, because that is the purpose of the state. The purpose of the state is to have an institution with so much outsized power that an individual citizen could appeal to the state for the level of power required to make those changes, because an individual citizen does not have that power on their own. If you want individual citizens to have that power on their own, arm the citizens.
Right. No, listen. 100%, I would agree with you with that. Here's what I would say. Are we willing to see this change if it means that it is going to get bloody?
I think many Trinidadians are more than willing. Like,
No, you believe that, but tell you something. Being in it and dealing with it, it is always going to have this thing hanging over. If you are in a situation where you are seeing this, you know how you can handle it, it needs to be dealt with in this manner. It needs to be removed.
mm-hmm.
But you have persons who have either political affiliations, political ties, and then you have agendas and interests. Do you know that one of the reasons why hanging and I think the Cat 9 was stopped had to do with a human rights issue?
Yes.
But yet in other countries, lethal injection and electrocution continues.
Mm-hmm.
How it is that in those countries they are able to tell you and govern over you what is the right way to punish when their measures are even more extreme?
Well, the problem with the hanging is a bit complicated. Partially, the issue is our legal system takes too long. And you cannot legally have someone on death row for X amount of time, because the length of time you leave them on death row in and of itself is cruel and unusual. So over a certain amount of time, you are not going to be allowed to hang them. So the part of the issue is our legal system is just too slow in processing hanging people. Now,
And Nathan, I tell you, they're not slow, you know. They know exactly what they're doing.
well.
And we don't want to even go into the topic, because again, if we start direct to what is actually happening, people will literally be scared for their life.
And
They literally will be.
here's the thing for me. I have been asking for the police, for the DPP, for those in those channels to start doing that. Like, okay, as the police association, the entirety of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, people are blaming you. Tell us where the actual problem is. Throw them under the bus. Throw them, because at some point in time we have to get out of this plausible deniability nonsense where everybody, well, it's not really me, it's them, it's not really me, it's them, and we are the ones losing out in the end. Throw whoever it is that is stymieing the system, throw them under the bus. Here's the thing, I don't believe that the population would have a problem with the blood. The police killed, what was it, 6 of them in Central the week before.
People was upset that the 15-year-old, they find the police.
How many people were really upset? Did even one tire burn? Like, let me be real.
I'll give it the non-tire burning that one. I'll give it.
Listen, if you did a national survey on a 15-year-old girl, and that's supposed to be something that have everybody clutching their purse. If you did a national survey on that 15-year-old girl, I think probably more than 80% of the population might have been like, whatever. Because the population already fed up. The population has a taste for blood, in fact. Maybe more than should be.
Okay.
So I don't actually think, like, it's like, to me, that's part of the thing Mrs. Prasad Bisasa is speaking about with the stand your ground law. That's not a problem in Trinidad. Stand your ground is, if you do something to the perpetrator when they are there, you're going to be prosecuted, and stand your ground is to protect you from prosecution. Trinidad, the police don't prosecute you. A bandit come in your yard, you could beat them to death with a 2x4, and generally in Trinidad, the police might find a way to make sure you're okay. Go ahead. That's not an issue in here. That's not where the issue lies. The issue lies if we're trying to send it up the right channels and actually get this person in prison. That's where the issue lies. And can someone explain to me? I've been asking this for over a year now. The DPP says he has 55 or something staff. He says he needs more than 120. Can someone, for the love of all things proper, explain to me how we cannot hire more prosecutors in a country that graduates lawyer and doctor like water every year?
Right. You're correct.
So somebody needs to explain where the problem is, because I can't tell. And everyone is saying it's not me. The Prime Minister is saying don't blame me, blame the society. The society is saying, well, the police too corrupt. We can't call the police because they're corrupt. The police is saying, well, the judiciary isn't doing anything when we lock them up. The judiciary is saying, well, the government isn't supplying us with what we need for us to keep them in prison. And the government is saying, well, yeah, we actually supplying everything. Don't blame us. So what? We just supposed to watch everybody drop down dead? And it's nobody's fault.
Well, boy. I'm not saying for everybody to watch everybody drop down, that's not what I'm hinting at. But I think you would understand what I'm coming from when I'm not just looking at one aspect of it. I'm looking at the entire picture where we all need to do something as a nation and stop doing this thing about there's no other government. It's only have 2 parties. No, we can't vote another party.
That's true. We can.
It's not to say we can't. We can. But I think what I see continually is that persons just like to have these conversations, and when the conversation is done, we just go back to what we know. We just go back to what needs. We just go back. Food prices rise. We cannot buy the food. We can. We can literally do it, but we don't want to because we want to be in everybody good book at some point.
Let me
We
just say
want to be in
good
good
night to
book.
the public.
Good night.
Sorry there.
No problem. Nathan,
Yeah.
talk a bit. Good night. I love your discussion. You made a statement by saying the DPP saying that they need to have XYZ. Let me ask you a question because I think this, for the sake of education, we need to ensure we get this correct.
Mm-hmm.
Who prosecutes the criminals in the court?
Who prosecutes the criminals? The DPP?
In the court, yes. Police directly bring someone up on a charge. They have a reason to say that they are charging.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is, who prosecutes the criminals in the court?
The DPP?
On behalf of the state?
Well, yes, on behalf of the state. Yeah.
Right. Who prosecutes the criminals on behalf of the state?
The Director of Public Prosecution.
No, sir.
Well, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution.
No, sir. And this is where we have any problem.
Mhm.
This right here is where we have any problem.
So who prosecutes?
And until we understand how this justice system works, taxpayers' money will jump out, and we are not going to have this. When the police arrested you and bring you before the court, there is no direct public prosecutor in the room. Number one, it is PC Constable or WPC, Barrage or whoever the name is, versus the name of the person who is being charged.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time you reach in the court, the first thing the attorney is going to say to you, or the judge is going to say to you, do you have an attorney present? Let me tell you how the court system works here. And when the person says, no sir or ma'am, I don't, the first thing the judge or the magistrate is going to say to you is that you have a right to an attorney. Even after the caution, according to the judge's rules, the judge will just go through the process by saying to you, you have a right.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say this to you. These matters do not ever reach the DPP until the matter is either lost because a police officer coming before the court to play prosecutor when that is not their job. The DPP is never in the room, and this is more than 99% of the cases.
So are you saying that the police aren't doing their jobs correctly? That's why the cases are being lost?
Saying to you directly, the flaw in the justice system is where police officers must never ever be acting as if they are prosecutors in the room. When the state of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago says to you, in the matter of PC Barat versus Lyndon Mack, it is PC Barat who is coming before the state under the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to try to prosecute on a matter. This is the 2024. And many times when the police officer is shot for court, let me tell you what goes on. The person who is representing the police service then says before the magistrate, no call before the officer your worship, which means the person and the police officer who is supposed to come to court to start trial is not there. Well, you understand? The DPP is nowhere in the picture for that. Okay? So we need to get this thing right, because what normally happens after that situation is done, tomorrow the police officer don't show up for court because the man who's standing up before the justice system and know he don't have a lawyer present and he don't know his rights. Matters get thrown back 2 and 3 months. That is the court system that we're dealing with.
Yeah, but that is on the magistrates, because I've seen this happen numerous times, even with an attorney present. I've seen this happen even with an attorney.
Right. So, and then this is the question now. The question is, when the magistrate, remember, you have to understand too, when that one magistrate have to listen over 100 cases a day, and she could afford to say, or he could afford to say, all right, the police ain't show up for court, we got the full case. By the time you look, you have already spent 6 months in the system waiting for a case to be called. Because if the officer ain't show up today, it goes back 3 months. If the officer come to court and he ain't prepare his witness statement, or these are the problems, I'm telling you, these are the problems that have cases delaying 3 and 5 years.
So the solution then is for the police to send the case to the office of the DPP faster?
The solution is when a person comes before the court to be heard on a trial, direct public prosecution is supposed to already be in the court and abreast of the matter. In other words, if I am representing the state as the DPP, and that police officer arrests a man, and that case comes before me, and I've realized you don't have a solid case, you don't have a solid evidence, then I'm supposed to say to you, go to the police as the DPP, let a man go, or let have no case.
Right.
But then when you have to now go through the process to go in the matter to be heard, and the DPP is nowhere present, the police.
But why is the DPP nowhere present?
This is the problem. This is the problem. That is the problem itself. Because the police officer is in the court acting as the, what you call, prosecutor.
So is it that the police purposefully blank the DPP out of the process, or is it that there are not enough?
They don't.
No, they don't.
What happens is that from the rank of sergeant is those who would be on the basis of the DPP operate as the prosecutor.
Yes, that's what I see in the court.
And that is wrong.
Hold on. No, you said it wrong, but that is what the prosecutor, the DPP wants, I want to say, is it the policy? I'll use the policy. Don't use the policy because I don't want to say anything wrong. That will be the policy in certain matters. There are other matters that will go directly to the DPP where he himself would deal with.
And this is what I'm saying there to you.
Yeah.
That is the problem.
It depends on the type of charge.
The police
type of charge. Yeah, depends on the type of charge.
You see, we ought to get this thing correct. Police officers are responsible for enforcing law and arresting. When you come to bring up a matter of a charge, then the person who is representing the state as the attorney is then supposed to be prosecuting based on the nature of evidence that the police have gathered.
Correct.
The police officer is not supposed to be arresting and prosecuting officer in the court. That is what you call a conflict of interest.
So who is responsible for this? The police?
This is what I'm saying. This is where we are having the problem. Because what goes on many times, you hear Kevin say, is based on some type of cases, but it's not supposed to be based on certain type of cases. Every case that goes before the court, as long as the police has detained you rightfully, all these matters are supposed to be brought before what is called the Direct Public Prosecution Office. That is why it's called the DPP.
That's what I would have figured. But here's something I might guess. I might guess that with the DPP saying his staff is understaffed by over 100%, that sounds like something where an easy excuse could be made that the reason they are doing it where they use police prosecutors is because they are understaffed anyway. Would there be enough DPP representatives, DPP lawyers, to go through and prosecute all the cases that the police bring?
But let me just say to you, and I want to bring this to you. When you look at the U.S. justice system, you know directly the U.S. justice system has way more cases than Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
At the end of the day, regardless of what is happening in the court, by the Constitution, has to operate according to the Constitution. So
I agree.
Which means, if you are having 1,700 cases a day, the court is supposed to ensure that the DPP is there to represent every case, even if the person don't have an attorney present, they have to make sure that the person is there. I remember going to court 4 or 5 months ago, and I had to hear the magistrate saying, well, you know, sometimes we should send cases to the public defender, to the not the public defender office, the office whereby a car phone an attorney, and they send it to that office to get an attorney. We should suit some cases their way. There are cases going before the courts. And
let me ask a question.
And there is no attorney present to hear these matters. I've literally read this before a court. Yeah.
Let me ask a question to get some clarification. The sergeants and of who actors who represent the DPP in court matters, are they not officers that are assigned to the DPP's office?
Yes, they are. Through the court and process aspect of it, of the police service.
And this is where we have any problem again. Conflict of interest. You cannot represent two institutions. This is what people failing to understand. I can't be a
They
member
represent
of
them
police.
too. Oh, they represent them too.
Because the person is a member of the police service. You cannot represent the police service directly, and then
These people qualified lawyers.
I don't know if these persons are called before the bar, but I'm fully aware is that if you are called before the bar, then this is what a DPP is. You are supposed to be legally calling before the bar in order to be practicing law to prosecute criminals. If you are saying to me directly that if I'm at the rank of sergeant and I can be representing in the DPP office, right there you're having the conflict of interest. Because again, what you are saying to me is, I am a police officer, but I am being called to a special division to represent on behalf of the state. You are still representing two institutions. At the end of the day, your name is sergeant.
Hence I said, and I will check it while you talk. Hence I said, when it comes to certain cases, I don't want to say something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There are cases that the Director of Public Prosecutions will deal with directly. But in terms of, if it is, I want to say minor cases, so things like, if I want to say marijuana, those type of what they call small cases, they will allow that aspect of it to happen. But when you're talking about things of murder and you're talking about things higher up, the director will deal with it because he will have to go through to give direction what the charge is and going forward with the charge. But I will check to make sure how it is actually the policies written up while all you talk. I will check it.
But Linnan, I understand what you're saying, but I still don't necessarily see where the problem is in that per se.
Let me tell you what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
When you have what is called mal-persecution or misconduct in the public office, where there is a situation of malicious persecution, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Where the malicious persecution starts? The malicious persecution starts at the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, who brings the charge on behalf of the state. If we are saying we need to ensure that there is a Chinese wall between the way the Trinidad and Tobago Police does its job and between the way the DPP does its job, then there must be a Chinese wall at all times.
Okay.
You cannot directly represent two institutions whereby I am a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, but because I'm of the rank of sergeant, then you can put me in the office of the DPP. That's a conflict of interest. And this is why you see many times we have probably now over 70% of our cases right now in Trinidad that is now resulting in a situation of malicious prosecution cases right now. The state has to fork out money to wrongfully charge the persons because there is a problem in the evidence gathering of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And then what happens after? The state and taxpayers have to pay money now to a wrongfully charged individual, and then there is no avenue of sanction against the police officer. I just go about getting a promotion after I have cost the state millions of dollars. That's crazy.
I don't think there's a problem with evidence gathering. What I think there is a haste to charge persons, and after charge persons, then do investigations.
Hear what I'm saying to you, and again, this is where it starts from the first place. You cannot rightfully charge a person before the court if you have not reviewed the evidence. Then we bring in a backward measure. How do you bring late charges if your evidence is not properly well gathered? It means you have already started in a malicious prosecution issue, and then you have already created for me problems. You detain me. You have already put me through a level of embarrassment before the state because the officer is hasty to go to court. That's crazy. Crazy.
I mean, TTPS has a whole forensic science unit. I don't think there's a problem in gathering evidence. They have a unit dedicated to that, gathering evidence and forensics. That is their job.
Yeah, buddy, but here you think, but they have the unit. My question is why it's not being used properly. You're telling me I reckon we are still having problems in 2024 where investigators are going on scenes to investigate situation of robbery, etc. And you still can't even gather the information properly for evidence. All these fingerprints directly that we take in and pictures, that's a database that they have. So even if you have never been in the database, or let's just go for the situation of a simple, what you call certificate of character. You're willfully giving your data to the police to check to see if they could run your situation, right? And at the end of the day, you think you come up in a match. Then now the police have some evidence to look at. Do we ever educate the citizen by saying, well, by directly submitting your data, you are willfully giving your information? We have never done that. So I just say, even right now, the police could go about loopholes to gather your data and your information, and you could willfully give it if you're looking for a job, because the crime situation has become out of control. But again, the problem, the first avenue is, if I am a police officer and I am charging you for a crime, the spirit of the law says that the crime that you are being charged for is in accordance with the evidence I have rightfully gathered against you. If it is not that, and then you have now put me before the court on a false charge because you rushing to do your work, then this is where we have a problem with confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, because officers who wear the uniform want to say, you know what, I will give you a charge. And then at the end of the day, you have no real evidence. You're costing taxpayers more money to have to fork out when police officers been and losing the case in the court.
I got you. Is it that this was a procedure that came about, as it were, in common practice, just how we did things, just a colloquial way of doing things, and as the system expanded, it just failed on that front, or was this something that recently changed?
Well, I mean, if you're dealing with the avenue of common law, you should know directly that all kings back in the day of common law had to take the time and hear the evidence brought before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we adopted a Westminster system based on that system. So again, and this is why I'm saying this is why I have a problem with the Privy Council, because the justice system that we have now does not cater for the peasant on the street to be heard by the lady or the Lord of London. If you don't have $1 million and change in order to pay for the Privy Council to hear you, the Privy Council don't hear you. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And it's based on the evidence gathering. So until we become a society that are strong on the values, I can tell you right now there are police officers who are going to go before the court on false charges because they just believe that they have the power to do so. And what you are going to have is a situation whereby the DPP don't intervene until the police officer loses case, and then you have a malpractice, you have a prosecution. Now that you sue it, and then the DPP now comes to intervene. And this is what people go through. I go through it. And so I can tell you, first off.
Mr. President, good night to all. Nathan, who's everybody in the box?
Good night, good night.
I just have a question, right? I tried to follow Lyndon for the longest while. Is it that he has a problem with his sergeant that works in the DPP office pressing charges? Or is it that you think that the police or the sergeant in the DPP office convict the persons? What is the issue?
The issue is when it comes to independent institutions are not supposed to be crossing each other. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have independent institutions crossing each other in order to make the system fair, and I will give you a significant part of this. The Parliament, where we are supposed to have a lower house and then we are supposed to have an upper house before laws are passed. We are no longer using that system because you have senators that are sitting in the same seats with members of Parliament to pass laws, and this is where the country is having a problem.
Hey, Lyndon, now before you go, Lyndon, just before you go on, right, now understand the I keep mentioning, I think in the chat, the separation of powers. There's the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. The police is made up of the executive. And do you agree with that?
Right.
Right. So the DPP never convicts anyone. Anybody working in the DPP's office, to my knowledge, never convict anyone, and they don't have the power to convict anyone. They have the power to probably press charges, which is their role and function of the executive. So if a sergeant working under the DPP office find a case or find that the case is valid, they will press charges. They're not convicting. It is up to the judicial system now to convict or not to convict the individuals based on the charges that the DPP decide to press charge, or whatever charges the DPP decide to give them. So there's not a intertwine of the role and function of a sergeant working in the DPP office and the judicial system.
Right,
the judicial system is separate and apart from that.
You just said that the DPP could convict, correct?
I never said that. I said the DPP could charge like any other police officer.
Very good. No.
The difference between charge and conviction.
Right. So this is what I stand again. This is where we are having the problem. You are saying that the DPP has the role and the responsibility to charge. Here's what you are not understanding. A police constable decide that I'll come and I'll plant you with some weed tomorrow and I'll directly arresting you for the avenue of possession of marijuana. And I directly, it don't start at the direct public prosecution. It starts at the police constable from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service that directly gives you a paper and say you're detained under this section of the law, etc., etc. And then they will give you the judge's rules, and then you have to go through the process. It ain't reached the DPP office yet. And this
that is their role. They will charge you. Now you have to find a lawyer and fight your case in the judicial system to prove whether or not the charges laid against you is either make you innocent or guilty.
Oh, yeah.
Let me ask you.
And I think, just now, Linda, just now, you are saying, because what the scenario you're using, at the end of the day, all information, evidence must be brought before the magistrate to prove your case.
Gentlemen,
You have to prove your case.
let me ask you a question.
Simplify what Lyndon Mack is saying. Just like the US justice system, police officers are not prosecutors. Police officers charge and they present evidence to the prosecution. We are not prosecutors.
Exactly.
But he is saying it should be a completely separate entity.
Exactly. You cannot.
It should be prosecuted.
In other words, you cannot be the arresting officer and then you are trying to lay charges in the court. That's a conflict of interest.
But the arresting officer is not who laying the charge. Is not who.
It's another officer, not so?
Is that not the
Another officer.
Kevin,
Uh-huh.
are you saying
Organization
to
as a
me?
whole, the entity as a whole,
Are you
should
saying
not
to
cross
me?
line.
Just Abu, are you saying to me tonight that as a police, that as a police constable or a corporal or a sergeant, when I give you a charge, it is the DPP laying the charge and not the arresting officer?
When I arrest you,
Let me hear you.
when I arrest you and I bring before you summary evidence and all the relevant documents showing why it is the charge is coming, why it is you are being charged.
Right. You hear what I say? You hear what I say? Just now. I wanted to understand what you're saying. You hear what I now say? You had just said, when I am bringing before you the information and I am laying charges before you, you are the police officer who represents the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Is
Because
laying
I'm
the
the
charge.
arresting officer. Because I'm the arresting officer.
Isn't the arresting officer the person that's supposed to lay the charges on you too?
Who's supposed to lay the charge?
Good, very good. I know, gentlemen, listen to my
I'm the arresting officer.
But listen, that will always be the case.
Okay.
Not the prosecutor. The prosecutor is somebody different.
Just now.
Mm-hmm.
When your case is called before the magistrate,
Uh-huh.
who is the case called between? Is it PC Kevin or is it the DPP of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago versus Lyndon Mark?
It would be PC Kevin versus Linama because I arrested you.
Wouldn't-
I'm charging
but-
you of an offense.
But wait.
But I'm charging you of an offense.
Wait, just now, Lyndon Mac. Wouldn't it be in the legal system that we're talking about here, the charging officer would have to be the complainant because it's basically him saying the legal system is basically understanding it as this officer saw you and got the evidence of you doing XYZ, and he is complaining to the judicial system attempting to prove that you did XYZ. So he is the complainant.
Very good. And this is where we have any conflict of interest because again, directly, this is what now happens. When the police officer goes ahead and lay charge, bring it before the state. Listen to where it means now. It's not going to the DPP office. The officer is already laying charges and it is being heard before the judiciary, which is wrong because now you are acting as the complainant and laying charge. You can't directly be complainant and lay charge. That's a conflict of interest.
But what they're saying, if I am understanding correctly, is that the officer who is prosecuting the case is acting on behalf of the DPP basically. And is that what you're saying should never exist?
Not supposed to happen at all. This is where we have any problem. No, it is not supposed to happen. As long as you are, and you see, we have gotten so complainant in doing the wrong thing that people will hear that and say, oh, that's cool. That could never be the right thing. If you are a police officer and you are laying charges against me, the person, you are now supposed to be called by the DPP, who is the attorney that is going to prosecute for the state, to call you as a witness to say, if I come on the scene and I pick up 5 cases or three shells on the ground for Asmith and
But that's
Western.
what the prosecutor does.
No, just now, bro, just now. Here what I'm saying to you. In Trinidad and Tobago, based on the nature of the case, I'm saying to you, many times this is not the way the procedure goes. The procedure goes where PC Kevin will charge based on what he sees in first evidence and then lays the charge against the person, and then the charges that are being laid is now called before the justice system. The attorney who normally gets involved, if I have an attorney to represent me, is going to be there and present to hear my case. But you, who is the arresting officer, is not supposed to be the going ahead to press charges. It is supposed to be the DPP who is now going to look at your matter and say, hey, you have enough evidence to press charges, and then this matter could stand up in court.
That is why we have something called, court orderly room, where you send these things before that orderly room, and they will let you know to go ahead or not.
But
We have a DPP.
I understand what you're saying, Lyndon Mac, and I agree. My caveat on that is I feel this is a feeling. I'm seeing it clearly. It's a feeling. I don't know this. I feel like the reason it is the way it is because of the first problem I brought up, that the DPP's office is understaffed in the first place. That's my feeling, because what you're saying makes sense to me, that we should have a total separation there. The police would be the ones that can arrest you. They accumulate the evidence, etc. But the decisions on charging should be left to people who are specialized in the law and the legal framework, so they could look at the evidence and see what charges can be laid and prosecuted, totally separate from the arresting and evidence gathering people. That makes sense to me. It actually does make sense.
Let me just ask one thing. So, if, let's say we decide to get a body of people who will press these charges, right? Who are going to convict them? The judicial system?
Yes.
The judicial system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what does a separate body to charge when the executive is responsible for charging? The executive is the person responsible for law enforcement. The executive is made up of the police service.
Yes. Yes, and the Coast Guard and the military. That's the executive branch.
When the police service is the executive.
Yes, but you are saying here, under what we call if you have to look at what we call the military operates as the executive branch of the state to keep that law.
That is incorrect.
That is incorrect?
The police are the executive of the state.
But both of them are part of the executive. The executive is law enforcement, and it is also military. Now, I could tell me if I'm seeing this correctly, King David. I could see there where there's a little connection that needs to be made, because yes, the state is responsible for law enforcement, but the decisions on prosecution, you don't want that with the executive. You actually want that with the judiciary. So the prosecution branch, wouldn't you want the prosecution branch to be separate from the executive in case you would like to prosecute the executive?
Yeah, I cannot disagree.
If the charging is under the control of the executive, wouldn't that make it impossible to charge and prosecute the executive?
That's true.
So logically, shouldn't the charging and prosecution be outside of the executive?
All right, so let me clear one thing first. When they say prosecution, right? What do you mean by prosecution? Because if there's charging, there's conviction. Where does prosecution fall?
Prosecution is trying the case to convict you, attempting to convict you.
So therefore you're bringing the information before the court for the magistrate to make a decision.
Right.
So the magistrate who has the final say, right?
Yes.
Right.
So that's different.
Nonetheless, here's the problem though, Kevin. Tell me if you're seeing this. If the executive is in charge of prosecuting the case, they will never prosecute themselves.
Thank you. Why you believe that?
Why would they prosecute themselves?
It is happening right now, Kevin.
When do they prosecute themselves?
When do they do that?
When do they prosecute themselves?
When do they prosecute themselves?
Have you ever seen the DPP give any sentence? Have you ever seen any
Prosecute isn't convict. Here's what I'm saying. If the Prime Minister did something wrong and he's the head of the executive, and he decides who is prosecuted. How will that prosecution begin? Shouldn't the prosecution be in the hands of an independent, separate entity than the executive?
That is an obvious conflict of interest.
You understand what I'm saying, King David? And I think that's why many countries, most countries, as far as I could tell, that's generally the process. That you have an Office of Public Prosecution that handles the prosecution.
Right. David, Nathan, let me ask a question. Let me ask Kevin a question. Kevin, can a police constable arrest and lay charges against the Prime Minister?
Oh, what Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, he cannot.
No, he cannot, no.
Cannot? Why you can't? Why you can't?
You hold on. That would be a first division officer, not a second division officer.
We're saying to me directly, I am in enforcement, and I have witnessed you directly committing a crime as a member of the state. You're saying to me directly as a police constable, I cannot arrest you and lay charges against you
Based on the policy of how the police service has been constructed, a second division officer cannot do that as a first division officer.
No, gentlemen, you see why we having a problem. Because even right now in Trinidad and Tobago, the Attorney General Office that is equipped in prosecuting crimes is not being appointed by the citizens of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
Correct me if I'm wrong, sincere. You're saying that incorrect. So correct me if I'm wrong.
No, he talking to the comments there, Lyndon. Go ahead.
The comment, no,
Right. So based on that, you see why I'm having the problem. Because what you are saying is you have to
Okay,
give a...
he says anybody could. Well,
Exactly.
you say, okay, cool.
Exactly. And he's correct. Anyone can arrest a person because the person is the...
Can he lay the charges?
Of course, there's
You see? So you see what he says? The senior officer is who lays the charges.
No, right. So let me ask a question now.
Right.
Does it take... You see, and this is...
Sounds sincere for that. Clear.
Hold on. And I want to show you what the buyer said. So what you're saying is, I have to be of us. If I'm a particular member of the state, only a specific officer could lay charges. But if it's a regular person, anybody could lay charges, because if I don't have certain rank, the level of respect changes. And this is where we having the problem right now in this judicial system. That is not how the Westminster system was supposed to be designed, from a monarchy that allowed kings to listen to their president when they have an issue. And this is the problem that we have right now.
Well, Lyndon Mac, here's the thing. I agree with you there. And this is a problem I've had with the Westminster system as a whole. The Westminster system, we took it wholesale and pull it over here. But that system was created for the British Isle that was melting pot of their own European nature for over 1,000 years by themselves right there. So they did that born out of their monarchy and attempting to balance the powers of the monarchy and the feudal lords and the different different societal groups there are. So when they make an independent commission on this side and an independent commission on this side, it's actually different halls of power that are pushing and pulling to get a nice balance. That's not what exists here. We just take the whole thing, throw it here, and actually one person is in charge of the whole thing really and truly. It's not that. So maybe I might agree that a system that would work better for a country like ours would have been a system closer to the US system, where it's not attempting to use those older feudal background ideas.
Let me ask you a question. Would it not benefit the TCPS to have those sergeants placed in stations and the DPP office hire attorneys and lawyers that are being graduating year after year after year to do that job?
That would have made better sense, Abu. That
we have a situation whereby the DPP needs to have persons working for them. The attorneys who are now coming out of law school and have been appointed to the bar, these are the people that just go to the institutions and then determine if there's a case is supposed to be done. So that when the charges is now being laid, it is now the state of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, because that is who the DPP represents, versus Lyndon Mack.
Cushy position in the service. That's like what? It's a cushy position. That is a cushy position with I'm very sure perks, salary perks added to it.
What salary perks you talking about?
I'm gonna say what I say. It's a couple of members of the TCPS. Cool, I agree with that. But there are certain positions that are cushy positions that older hands are not going to get rid of, because those positions are for friends and associates. And
I'm still confused, right? So you want to remove the police from the DPP's office because there's a conflict of interest.
Put the police in the stations, that's where they should be. Their sergeants, they should be running stations.
Right, what?
Are coming out of law school daily.
Just now. So you're saying there's a conflict of interest having police in the DPP's office.
That's correct.
The lawyers that have...
Let him finish. Let King David finish his point.
Let me explain where the conflict of interest is as an entity. As an entity that creates
I understand. Right. So the lawyers that have who have seen the bar, they fall under which system?
Judicial.
Most of
The judicial, right? The judicial. So isn't that still a conflict of interest for them to be part of the DPP's office and the judiciary? It's still a conflict of interest.
They were trained to perform those roles.
It is not
but it still falls under the judiciary.
Just now. David, I think you're getting this wrong. When you are called to the bar, you are called to the Bar Association of Trinidad and Tobago to practice law. That then allows you to either go into general law, which means you can go and represent your own private practice or a company, or you can then either be employed by the state, who is the direct public prosecution office in matters for the state. What we are saying is there is a lack of officers who are what you call direct public prosecution officers, who are attorneys, who is supposed to be representing the state in these matters, and because of that flaw, you have police officers who are arresting, charging, and trying to... This is where we are having the problem.
I'm telling you this, right? How you are coming across is that the officer who arrests and charge is the same officer who prosecutes, and that is not what happening.
Kevin, let me share something to you. I wanted to go and look at any case law, and when you go and look at any case law, I wanted to look on the documents and see directly where there is an attorney at law. What is happening currently before the judicial system is PC or WPC Charles making an appearance as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service under the role of complainant.
I have a friend who's an attorney of law representing his state on matters.
You represent...
And she is not a police officer.
Just now.
So that is incorrect.
But what I'm saying is, the position should not be for police officers. Let those sergeants be placed in stations, do that job, which is policing, and let attorneys do what they were trained to do, which was represent whatever side it may be in the court of law.
And that's what I'm saying. Complainant is different from prosecutor. So if so this is what I'm trying to understand. The prosecutor, the person who's prosecuting, what you're saying should not be a police officer.
Is not supposed to be a police officer.
When I say not supposed to be, based on how the policies are constructed.
Based on how the court structure is done, it is supposed to be a matter of the state of the Trinidad and Tobago versus Alvin Thomas. Alvin Thomas, who is being charged for a crime, is being represented by his personal attorney.
when the attorney of the state who is representing the Trinidad and Tobago, then they call the person who is giving the evidence. That is PC Kevin Charles, PC, PWPC, etc., to give the information. But what we have here in Trinidad and Tobago is PC Kevin Charles directly or Sergeant Brown arresting, laying charge, and then coming to
No, Lyndon. If I arrest somebody and I lay the charge against them, the prosecutor is not me. I am not the prosecutor.
Kevin, you ever go before court before?
Yes.
When the state calls it, just now, let me ask a question. When the attorney says, Kevin, and I just say, PC Kevin before the state in the matter of Leila Clark, it's because Kevin lay a charge before Leila Clark, correct?
Right.
Yeah, but the charging officer don't be the prosecutor.
That is it. We are not the prosecutor.
But what he is saying is that oftentimes the prosecutors are also police officers.
Right.
Yes.
They correspond from the same entity.
Yes. It's on the same entity.
So again, and this is what we gain. The police service is not supposed to be the prosecutor's Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
But what I'm explaining to you, Lyndon, is this. Just as how, and I think what I was saying is that there are cases, I don't want to use the words carefully.
Mm-hmm.
They are minor, they call minor and they call major, right?
Mm-hmm.
Minor and major, right? The major ones, the DPP will see it and recommend what the charge should be made, right? When we talk about minor, it goes before something called court orderly room, which the sergeants will go through, and they could say, if you're coming before the court with this, or what if it is to go before or not go before. Because I know the DPP
Let me ask a question. Why is the DPP, that is an independent institution, giving advice to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in what you are calling a division that is operating in the courtroom?
Because, Lyndon,
Just now. Giving advice as to how to charge a person in the court. Tell me why that is happening.
because, Lyndon, that is the policy the DPP office has been given and power to do. They could do that.
This is what I'm saying.
And if you're saying it's a wrong policy, that's what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so you're saying it's a wrong policy.
From my layman's perspective, let me explain from my layman's terms, right? In my layman's terms, I am looking at it as an entity. DPS is an entity by itself. The DPP's office is an entity by itself, right? The role of the charging officer is to present the evidence to the prosecuting officer, right?
Correct.
What he's saying is this. There should not be a crossing of entities. A member of the TTPS, which is the charging entity that provides evidence against an accused, should in no way be convicting matters.
We are not convicting matters.
Well, prosecuting matters. Here's how I see this too, Abu.
Prosecuting and convicting is the same thing.
I could see the conflict and I could see why it shouldn't be. As we are speaking about,
Is prosecuting and convicting the same
no, it's not the same thing. It is not. And that's not what they're saying. They're saying the prosecution shouldn't be on the charging entity. And here's the thing. If the prosecution is on a separate entity, there's less impetus for put up case and frame case and cases that where you're attempting to hedge what the police did in the charging. The police did some little malfeasance in the charging, and then because the prosecution is part of the TTPS too, they're trying to hedge that and losing the case in prosecution to protect police behavior. I could see something like that happening.
Let me ask you a question, Nathan.
Yeah?
I have something after
it is a waste of manpower how it is presently organized.
Of course.
Very strong manpower ways to be wasted. Because number one, there is not supposed to be a court processing unit by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. That is not their role and function. when the police is now acting as enforcement, and then
What is the role of a police officer?
listen to what I'm saying here, bro. Listen to
No,
what I'm
what is
saying.
the role of a police officer? Have you read the Police Service Act?
The role of the police officer is to enforce the law. Enforcement. Which means when Parliament votes, when the Parliament sits before the Parliament to make a law, the police is there to enforce. You can't enforce a law that has not been written by the Parliament. So what I'm saying to you is, that is what they are supposed to be doing. When you are there in the division of the police, then you will have special investigators trained to gather evidence. So that when charges are supposed to be laid, they have gone through what you call the Constitution properly to gather evidence and then lay what you call charges. And then after those charges are being laid, the prosecutor, direct public prosecutor,
Here's the thing.
realizing that you have laid charges, can now say, your evidence makes sense. I can now go before the state as the United, as Lyndon Mack versus the United States court in the District of Columbia, etc., for the state of possession of drugs.
Sincere says, do we understand the word prosecutor? It is not to help the charged person. Technically, yes. But technically, no. The job of the prosecutor isn't just to prosecute. The job of the prosecutor is to make sure it's prosecution in line with the laws of the land. So it is not just to go ahead with what the police said. So the police said XYZ and the prosecutor run on ahead with the police. No, you are an independent individual entity that is supposed to function differently. If the police, listen, part of the reason Kamala Harris in the United States right now is facing a lot of backlash is because when she was Attorney General and prosecutor out in California, they prosecuted cases and kept people even though they had the evidence the people were innocent. The part of the prosecution's job is if you get the evidence that these people are actually innocent, you are supposed to throw out the case and not prosecute it. It's not just an auto function.
That is what happens.
No, sir.
That is what we do for recommendation.
But Kevin, I am not saying that's not what happens. What I'm saying is you could understand the conflict if the police are those who are charging and they are those who are prosecuting, then there's a vested interest in pushing forward prosecutions that may have been bad on the charging front in the first place.
Thank you. And right now, I can say to you as a human rights activist, we have probably over 70% of our cases right now in the court whereby police officers have badly charged persons based on the nature of how they gather their evidence. And this is going to result in taxpayers paying more money when they have to go and lay what is called a malicious prosecution charge.
do you all think that, like, so I understand what you're trying to say now, Mark. You will rather that persons working in the DPP office be made up of lawyers, not police.
No, yes. By attorneys, not police.
So you think that is a way for the government to cut costs in terms of instead of hiring lawyers to work in the DPP office, they utilize the skills with already paying the police officers to work in the DPP office?
You can't create a conflict of interest.
It should be.
I understand the conflict.
Yes, no.
It will should be boss, but it would also have a conflict of interest. So instead of removing the sergeants who are lawyers, in the DPP office, you would prefer they have lawyers that are not attached to the police service working in the DPP office.
I don't mind government. I don't mind I don't mind.
Abu, let me ask David a question. You are aware right now, are you aware directly that when the DPP or when the police service goes ahead to charge and they happen to lose that case, that taxpayers have to spend 100 times more money that you will be paying at DPP monthly? because you now have, when it goes before the institution of a court, and then you realize that person in the system, 3 years waiting for the case to call, is going to cost taxpayers way more than you hire an attorney, right? You know that this would also cut the cost of many of the cases that have to be brought before these judges, whereby police have not arrested and charged based on proper evidence, and that we could be able to cut and slash half these cases in half if they realize that you don't have a case,
And
there is no charge.
here's the thing for me also. I could agree with allowing people to do their jobs. Like, if there's a police officer who's excelling in law, it should be easy for them after they pass the bar to cross over to the DPP's office, and you are a former police officer, now you're a prosecutor. That makes perfect sense to me. I don't see that being a problem, but I could see the logic of not trying to muddy the two of them. Why don't we have the prosecutors prosecute and the police? That makes sense to me. And since that has nothing to do with prosecution comes after charge. So if the evidence is weak from get-go, then what? Then we shouldn't prosecute. And that's why you want a separate office from the prosecution and the charging folks. You want a separate office there. And since I don't agree with the kind of idea that prosecution is supposed to go guns blazing to try and get a guilty conviction, and it's only the magistrate supposed to balance. That's not the job of the prosecution. The prosecution is supposed to weigh the evidence based on the Constitution. They are not there just to convict.
Look, can I say something?
Of course.
The Police Service Act, right?
Mm-hmm.
The duties of the police officer is to maintain law and order, prevention and detection of crime, and prosecution of offenders. Part of our duty is to prosecute.
That's down. And this is what I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand Kevin, listen to what I'm saying to you. You read part of this called the Human Rights Act in 1948 is to understand that your role and function is being made based on policy. We have to understand that policy, slavery was once written into law that a man could own another man as a slave. I wanted to understand that there's a conflict of interest in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service at this point in time. Your role is not to prosecute persons. This is why we are having a problem, and I can tell you right
Lyndon,
more money right now.
I just read this is the act that is governing the police service, giving us our duties. This is our duty. This is the duty of a police officer. The role of a police officer in the Act 1501, Police Service Act 1501, to the maintenance of law and order, prevention and detection of crime, and prosecution of offenders.
Right, good. Let me ask a question.
Kevin, but listen, right? You know there's something called bad law and bad policy, right?
And this is what I'm trying to explain to him.
You
Let me ask
have
a
nothing
question,
to do
Kevin.
with the executive. That is illegal. It's not a legislative problem.
Something
It's not a legislative problem.
Pull up.
It's a legislative problem, exactly. It's a legislative problem.
No, let me speak. Something being on the law books. Legislation being there does not mean it is proper or correct or best practice. Not because it is there.
So, Maximus, it's not best practice, it is not there. So what you want, Maximus, if that is the duty we have, what you want me to do, which I am, this is my role, this is my duty, this is my function. It's not best practice to you.
Nobody then tell you to disobey orders, you know. What is being said is this.
But
There's the saying, oh boy, you've been a little.
I think, Kevin, if
it should not be a practice.
what they're saying is not that it's not in the law, because evidently it is in the law. What they're saying is that's not how it should function, ideally.
Exactly.
That is not an issue for the police service. That should be corrected from the legislative aspect.
Well, I don't disagree with that either.
David,
No one said it's an issue for the police service.
You can't change that. I have no doubt that you can change that. And either way, if it is to do what Lyndon is suggesting and what I could kind of agree with, we bounce up into the problem I started talking this about, the fact that the office of the DPP says they have less than half of the amount of staff they need anyway. So, of course, that's not on the police. That's not on the DPP either. It's on whoever is supposed to hire the staff and all of that.
Let me draw a reference to this, right? Let me ask Kevin a question.
Kevin, would you agree right now that the confidence of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has 50% trust by members, by citizens in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago?
I won't say 50%, but
Less than 50%.
You know why?
I
Do
won't say 50%.
you know why it's low?
Yes.
Because a lot of the police officers have abused their authority, and because of abuse of authority, there is what you call a lack of trust in the public institution of the police, because there are men who have taken what is called the abuse of power, because they have been given the power to do so, and then a man with a problem with 2 could just come and lay charge. And this is why we are saying, let's not break you are saying to them. This is why we are saying that is a piece of bad law. Your duty is not to do so. If we don't tolerate it,
Why, Kevin?
All right.
Why?
No, go ahead.
Also legal and legislative. Having a commissioner of police who didn't come to the ranks. And plenty police didn't like that. But the hard was to go with it because it's there. It was written there. Plenty police have a problem with that.
No, let me say this. Based on what Linda was getting to. Whether or not I hear a lot of people talk about people don't have confidence in the police service, for a person in it, I am seeing what you don't see. I am facing what you don't face. What you get is sometimes what is either posted on media or what you may experience in one scenario. And the reason I'm saying that is because of this. Confidence is not something just built by, or trust is just built by 1 or 2 things happening. It is over a consistent period of people seeing the good. And I always say, what we highlight in Trinidad is always bad. Because if we begin to highlight what is good and what we see as good, and we use that good to propel going forward, it may have a different tone. But when we hear, and I'll give you an example. The other day I sit down and I hear somebody say, there's get them fellas in prison, something in the bread and the water, so things will affect the stomach. And I'm like, where all this get this information from? Where all this get information? So you heard somebody plant, a police plant weed on somebody, you believe all police planting weed on people. You hear somebody, you hear somebody plant something on somebody, you believe all police doing that. And what happens is this: when you come across now an officer who wants and who is doing the right thing, you come with that same energy, expecting now us to trust when you come at us that way.
alright, Kevin, let me ask a question. Let me ask a
Do you understand what I'm saying, Abu?
I understand what you're saying, Kevin. But here's it. Here's the thing, Kevin. Tell me if you get what I'm saying here, Kevin. I agree that there's a lack of trust on both sides.
Both sides, yeah.
I agree. But one side is being paid to do this as a job. So, yes.
Wow.
Kevin,
Oh, that's okay, go ahead.
Kevin, this is honest. This is honest. I do contracting. I am a teacher also. If I am going to a job and somebody, the previous contractor that was there, do real madness, do nonsense, and whole day this owner only behind my workers watching them and watching what they do, and I could not like that he doesn't trust it. But this is what he's paying me to do. This is my job. So if anybody is to act weird in that situation, it has to be the novice who isn't doing this as a job. You're doing this as a job. You're supposed to go out there, even with the lack of trust, and still put forward a trustworthy face for all the public, because that's the duty you are being paid to do.
Let me ask Kevin a question. Let me answer a very honest question. And I want you to be totally and blatantly honest with us right now. In your last week of going to work, you had your body, you were wearing your body camera?
I have not been issued with one, sir.
Aha. So in 2024, where there is a trust issue with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, you are putting yourself at risk right now, where there is no information to protect you that says Kevin acted legally according to the law because we could pull his body camera and we could seize information. And this is why, as a human rights consultant, we have said, if many of you put that body camera on and ensure it's on, we can be able to see what the police is doing, and when they release their information, we could have a level of public trust. When Alexander and them went and made the raid directly for the guns, you know what was the issue that came back out from many of the citizens? They didn't trust the boss. You know why? And let me show you one of the reasons why. There is no way. There is no way an organized crime and narcotics bureau in 15 years, and listen to the track record I give you, has never busted a drug lord in Trinidad and Tobago where that person is trafficking guns and ammunition. 15 years, Kevin. The last time the State of the Republic held someone in a nature for crime on that level was dole trading. We have not in that amount of time. So what I'm saying to you is, once I hear you on the issue of the policy that you're enforcing at this point in time, that is bad law written.
The one who escaped and went Benny. Get them that one. That the one who escaped to Napuna Court and went Benny.
And Kevin, this is what I say oftentimes with officers. I hear a lot of that. I hear a lot of, we focus on the bad and people don't understand and stuff like that. But people live in Trinidad. Trinidad is a criminal place. People know criminals. And they know the police too. Bro, the police have status update, hug up in gold chain with the criminals. And I have them on my friend list. I see in this every day. Every day I see police and Zessa linemen together. Every day. And then police will come to tell me, no, you don't know what you're saying. It's actually just a real few of them. And I know, if I know so many police in all that kind of nonsense, the police officers know more. So why is it that every week I don't see police arresting police?
You see, Kevin, I just wanted to understand, buddy, is not we trying to make the institution look bad, but I could tell you right now, if I have to, right now, I could tell you, we are aware of what is called a human trafficking ring right now in Trinidad. You know, is my problem? I'm not too sure who I could go to bust that ring. Because it had police officers involved in the nonsense. And many times it don't start by oil. Many times it's starting at the Coast Guard, who are getting paid to look the other way for the boatman to smuggle. But
I will say this. I will say this. There are many things as I always say, I understand, I hear. I love my job. I'll put it that way.
I know that.
And where there is wrongdoing, and most people know that, I will stand for that. I will stand against it. I just don't believe the entirety of how people speak about the police service is correct. It is not just the police service as the issue. It is all around.
I agree.
And there are a lot of police officers who are very much tired, frustrated, because
I know that.
Because what we are called to do and what Nopanda said we are paid to do, we also have to think about and what we have to think about what we may have to sacrifice where our lives are concerned.
But let me get a recommendation now.
So it's not that I'm here to defend wrongdoing, you know.
I don't want anybody mixed. I don't hear defending wrongdoing. What I'm saying is, I think we need to have an overall picture that it's not just the police service has the issues.
I agree.
Because when you do the right thing, you remember you're going also into a judiciary system that also has its issues. And that in itself could be painful and frustrating.
Kevin, I have you ain't getting an argument from me there, because anybody who is in the live know I licks police, but then I go on to the judiciary, and my most licks is for the government. Most of my licks is for the government. But where I always draw back is I have to pound the police in the right pounding, especially when many officers try to make it seem like it isn't as we experience. Because I have plenty police family too. I have plenty police friends. I understand how difficult it is on that side. But let's not gaslight the public to make it seem like other officers don't know really how blatantly corrupt a lot of this whole thing is. You know these SRs too. You know them.
This is what we saying.
You assume I know these SSs.
Come now, Kevin, don't do me that. Kevin, don't do me that. I know you know these SSs. I know for a fact you know the police SSs. I'm sure. You have them in batch. They are your batch. They are your batch. They had the gun on the chest with the big link. They had the big link and the gun picture. And they had the big link and the gun picture. And come now, man. We know.
You see, remember over a period of time, police officers formed this thing called a bond, and that bond is being formed by you knowing family, wife, etc., etc. So after that time, you will know. But here I want to tell you, all your insiders who are claiming to be the good officers, you all need to have a proper what is called a proper union to represent.
Yeah, but them don't have no say though. Them don't have no say.
No,
Them can't talk of nothing. They pay the life for the life.
Yeah, them will get killed.
That's not correct at all. Listen to me, that is not correct at all. What you are saying there to me is what you call a corrupted behavior in practice. The Constitution directly of Trinidad and Tobago literally says that where it comes to your human rights to protection and freedom of speech, it is there. When you go in an institution, they want you to muzzle your mouth because they want to make the institution look good. But at the end of the day, is that working in the best interest of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service when we realize that so much of our officers are corrupted? The answer is no. And this is why police officers will get the backlash.
And the police get killed in Dago sometimes.
But Lyndon, remember a police officer get killed in a bus in a mock exercise.
Yeah. Listen, as I say, I live in Trinidad. I know accounts of officers quit the force, run away, fly out, go Canada. We know these things. We know these things. Trinidad. That's why, like for me to believe you are an honest police in Trinidad, you have to be running for your life every day. If you live in safe as a police, you aren't an honest police. You ain't honest enough. I'm sorry, but to me, Trinidad is at that kind of stage. That is the kind of level Trinidad at. If you're an honest police in Trinidad, your life's supposed to be at risk because that is the kind of country we live in.
Kevin, let me give my perception. Yes, right? The so-called good officers have to function with a level of caution and have to stay and have to intentionally and purposely turn a blind eye to corruption. Because their lives will be on the line.
I know.
No. I would say different for me.
Different for you? Then you ain't watching different. You're not seeing corruption in your station, boy.
No. You see, here's the thing. Here's the thing when I say it's different. I think what people have an expectation of is that what the outcome is supposed to be is this glorious and fanfare of things put out there. I have a history, and I've seen where it has been dealt with by law. So that's why I say I might be different. So there are things I've learned how to deal with it.
Right, but listen to what I'm saying to you. You say
So is it turning a blind eye?
Wait. You're saying you. but you're forgetting directly. And what we're saying to you is, you are in an institution, and that there's an institution problem to weed out their corrupted officers. So what is going to happen? You have to play plausible deniability, whereby you can't show out your partner, because at the end of the day, if your partner corrupt, literally, you know your partner corrupt, many times officers are turning a blind eye because they want to be safe. I have seen accounts where women police officers have literally said that they are fearful for their life on the job every day.
There's a common thing in there are police officers leaving, they're running away from CID and all of those kind of places. They want children's authority only because they afraid the criminals, you know. They afraid the police in task force and them kind of them. I don't work there, you know. Guys are not talk to police, they will tell you these things. And then I am supposed to look at that and feel safe, yeah?
There are a lot of issues and situations where you hear people leave because of those things. You hear it. It's a norm. It's like it became a norm.
Right. I heard that. I know.
You ever hear of a woman called WPC Bernadette? Is Bernadette Williams or Bernadette James?
Who's that, the one that fly out?
No. You ever hear of WPC Bernadette James or Bernadette James?
No.
James. That is the woman who they killed.
Right.
WPC Bernadette James.
I would not have been in. Maybe I would have been in or born at that time, so I wouldn't know.
Man, I wasn't born at that time as well, neither. But what I'm saying to you literally, that is the woman who they killed because she realized that there were high ups in the police service dealing drugs. And when she realized that was going on, you know who she had to run to? Yasmin Abu Bakr for protection. And they still end up and kill she. So I want to understand, don't think directly. We're not saying you don't have good officers inside there now. What we are saying is, there is not a system to weed out bad officers, and right now, officers have to compensate for wanting to keep the job and wanting to ignore that situation that is existing in the trade.
Kevin, there was an article, a series, just before your question, a series of articles I read on a case down in South, where one of the women officers was a witness against her fellow officers. And then halfway through the case, they took her out of witness protection. Then all of a sudden, she forgot her testimony. Like, oh my goodness, how amazing was that? And in that month, I read about 4 cases where all the cases against the police, the witnesses didn't give testimony and all the cases were dropped. Oh no, so fortunate for the police.
That's what's going on right now. Right now. We have people right now in the
So here's my thing. And I would have those articles. I'm about to check on those things, right? I hear a lot of things concerning that. Just as you say, for those who you might consider good, they have to turn a blind eye. And we are paid to do that. Would that be the same thing public does also in preservation for their lives?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Hold on. Right. So, would I really hold an officer who has that same thinking even though he's getting paid for it?
You see, where the lines get blurry, bro. Remember directly the citizen who is not paid by the state to directly enforce the law will want to keep their life because they want to remain alive, right?
Right.
Law enforcement officer assigned for that risk when you sign up for the job on that same day.
He assigned for the what? He assigned for the risk, right?
Of course, he assigned for the risk.
And he always have to assess the risk. He or she always have to assess the risk, right?
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
And in some cases, in assessing the risk, he has to be wise in how he approaches things. Right?
Correct.
So even when we come and having discussions on it, and having discussions live like this, he puts himself at risk.
Bro, I'm not telling you to go and lose your 3 points at all, innit?
No. What is this. You still have to be wise in your decision.
100%.
You still, so the thing is, even in him being wise in the decisions he makes, the general public will never understand the wisdom. Because what
They
the
may
general
not.
public wants is what they believe should be. So that's what we was explaining just now. If my duty is to maintain law and order and prosecute. Alright, son.
So Daddy, when are we going to watch a movie?
Not now.
Hey, the man go watch a movie, boy.
Midnight, innit?
So,
Sure, and bad, yes?
yeah. So, so what I'm saying is, if we have a duty to perform, and we performing those duties at the best of our ability,
Right.
in the midst of also dealing with corruption, in the midst of also dealing with threats to our lives, we always have to use wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Always, right? So the thing is, even though I think what I try to do is to get the public to also see the very things that you want, we want it also. The difference is where I am and where you are, I had to use more wisdom in how I get that answer done. Whereas you could speak about it, you could make things about it, but where I am, I have to be wise in what I do.
And listen, you're very right about that, because the last thing we want is any of the good officers to lose their life, right? And this is why we say independent institutions need to be strong. Because right now, if we were supposed to say who guards the guards, then at the end of the day, that question
Morning.
is left to the public to them who guards guards. At the end of the day, we don't want. Number one, I can tell you, I really love policewoman bad. Bad. I feel you.
Hey, forget that feeling. Forget that feeling.
That bad feeling, boy. Take a Andrews.
You want Andrews? You want Enos? Forget that.
But at the end of the day, what I say, as much as I love them bad, I wouldn't trust them as much as I could show them. Because again, there's a public perception that is there. At the end of the day, what I'm saying to you is, right? You have to understand what the public feel many times.
They just feel it.
And what we're saying is, when good officers understand the risk that they take every day,
Yes.
you know, they
Oh, jeez. My battery dead. Hi. All right, YouTube. Battery died over. Battery died over there on TikTok. My apologies to TikTok out there. Was a good night on the return. A long night on the return. All right, people. Thank you for tuning in. This has been the Mindful Live. Thank you out there, Luke Elbon, Karim Delpesh over there on YouTube, always tuned in. I'll see you guys again for the next Mindful Live. I'm not sure if it will be tomorrow. Well, today later. Until then, bye, folks. That's all I have for now. Hope you're educated, informed, or entertained.